over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Our writers are doing a phenomenal job covering all the sports that are in action right now. NBA, college basketball, NHL, soccer, tennis, golf, NASCAR starts this weekend as well. A lot of great content going up over there on a daily basis. Make sure that you head over there and check it out, including Kyle's daily college basketball picks piece, Parker Michaels' daily NHL piece, then all of the videos we have over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. Kyle will have one of those coming up here today for tomorrow's college basketball card. He'll also have one Friday for Saturday's college basketball card, and I do daily videos on the weekdays over there as well. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is that promo code, 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino. At BetDSI, it's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We start things off with Kyle Hunter, professional handicapper over at HunterSportsPicks.com. Kyle, how's it going today, man?
It's going all right. Kind of a tough weather day around here, as it is a lot of times in Ohio in February, but can hear that wind howling outside. Not ideal, but, spring's not too far away.
Spring not too far away. As I mentioned in yesterday's show, spring training, pitchers and catchers reporting for a lot of teams. Position players will start reporting here later in the week. So really looking forward to our MLB content coming up at BangTheBook.com as well, including my MLB betting guide, which I'm hard at work on, whenever I get the time to do that with everything else that's still going on here. But, Kyle, last night, man, I sent you a text at halftime of the Duke versus Louisville game, and I said, Chris Mack can effing coach. And then the second half happened. What a disastrous collapse from the Louisville Cardinals.
Yeah, I still think Chris Mack's a really good coach. I think that, he is doing a lot with the amount of talent he has there this year. And nobody thought that Louisville would be as good as they are this season. I mean, if you can take away that 12-minute span, 14-minute span, whatever it was, where they just played terrible basketball last night. I guess it was really only about 9 minutes. They were up 59-36 with 9:15 left in the game. So, really turnovers were the big problem. Christian Cunningham had 6 by himself. They had 17 turnovers in the game. I think 13 of those 17 were in the second half, something like that. They can't handle presses very well. If you look at their long-term stats for the year, they've struggled with presses. Duke switches into that zone press. I think you have to give Coach K credit for switching things up and playing zone. I know he doesn't like to do that very often unless he has to, but we know Coach K is a great coach. Switching it up really worked for them. I think that Louisville had some really careless possessions up, about 20 points or so with 6 minutes left. Those are the type of things that can really end up hurting you badly when you're playing an elite team like Duke. If you waste 3 or 4 possessions in a row where they could have been using up some time, they throw the ball away or take a bad shot quickly. And then Duke goes down, hits some shots quickly, gets a couple steals, and before you know it, it's a game again. And, the end of that game was really something because, Louisville, that Chris Mack badly wanted to call a timeout. They had burned all their timeouts, and not having any timeout at the end of that game really hurt them. This is a team that badly needed a break and talk to, and they couldn't get it. I thought it was also interesting that, the block charge call, with it looking like it was going to be a charge and then getting switched to the block with the review, which, his foot was inside the restricted area. That was another blow for Louisville. And I remember thinking last night, gosh, if you have Louisville plus 8, whatever you got, you really don't want this to go into overtime because this looked like one of those overtimes that would have been a boat race.
Well, and here's the question. We talk about trying to evaluate what these games and what these wins mean for teams. Does this say more about Louisville and just, what Chris Mack has to work with and the fact that we talk about this all the time, you have to learn how to win. That's one of the biggest growing pains for a team, learning how to win. They learned how to cover. They didn't learn how to win. So does this say more about the current state of Louisville, or does this say more about just how damn terrifying this Duke team is, that they can erase a deficit like that and just completely out-talent a team for so long that they make up 25 points or so, in 6 minutes and change.
I think it says more about Duke. I really do. I think that, Louisville, I still think I know what Louisville is. They're a quality team that's very well coached, that can beat anybody. Look, I mean, they already went on the road and beat North Carolina by 21 points. So, I mean, Louisville has had some good performances this year. They won at Seton Hall. They've got some pretty good performances on the slate so far this season. Obviously, they lost to Kentucky at home by 13. Then they lost at home to North Carolina by 10. Certainly, they're not really consistent at being elite. I don't think that anybody really thinks this Louisville team is elite, but they're a quality team. Duke, I mean, they're scary good when they're locked in like that. Everybody talks about Zion Williamson, and he deserves it. He's a great player. There are a lot of really good players on this Duke team. I've said this before. Look at the other freshmen there at Duke. R.J. Barrett is very good. He had a bad night last night. Cam Reddish hit some shots there at the end that were key. Trey Jones, really, really good defender. He was a big part of that win based on some of the steals and what he was doing in that press. This Duke team is very good. They're a young team. That's what the knock on them would be in the NCAA tournament. But nobody's more talented than Duke.
All right, so as we go forward here for Louisville, I mean, now what? You had a chance at a signature win in Chris Mack's first year on your home floor, the first blackout in Yum Center history, and that's what happens. So now what for Louisville?
Yeah, it's really, really hard spot here for Louisville going forward. They just lost in overtime at Florida State, 80-75 the game before this. Then fairly quick turnaround. They come back to play Duke. Huge game, like you said, the blackout. You lose it in this fashion. It's not like they just lost the game. The way they lost it matters. And now they play Clemson at home, at Syracuse, home against Virginia. They also have to play on the road against Virginia before the end of the season also. So they have a tough schedule left. I would not back Louisville in the next game. I wouldn't back them in the next couple games. I'm not saying I'm going to straight fade them either. I think Louisville will probably be favored by 6 points, 5.5, 6 points against Clemson. It depends on what Clemson does here in their game before that. But the odds makers are probably going to shade this one toward Clemson a little bit, because this is a really, really bad spot for them coming up on Saturday. I couldn't take Louisville in that game. The only thing I could take would be Clemson. But, this is going to tell us a lot about Chris Mack. I mean, we know he's a good coach. If he gets them right off the mat and they come back and cover the next couple games, then I'm going to be really impressed.
All right, so the other big story from last night in the college basketball world, and there were quite a few of them. I mean, Penn State knocking off Michigan was a pretty big story, too. LSU and Kentucky. I mean, that thing looked to be in the cylinder, apparently not reviewable. For the life of me, don't know why. There's a review for everything else in every other sports league, but you can't review that one. Kentucky can't dwell on it for too long, though.
No, I mean, Kentucky has that huge game against Tennessee this weekend. That's going to be a massive game. I think we'll talk about that one on Friday. I actually made some notes about it and then realized that I was going to be back on Friday and thought, we'll talk about it on Friday. But, this is a Kentucky team that had been playing some tremendous basketball, very good defensively. They weren't as good defensively last night as they have been. 1.12 points per possession for LSU. And I think you could say that LSU played well enough to win in that game regardless of the call. I will say, obviously if you're a Kentucky fan, and if I was a Kentucky fan, I'd be upset the way the game ended. I don't blame them a bit for that. But at the same time, LSU was right there the whole time. They were up 2, a foul there on a 1-and-1. Kentucky hits both shots, and then that's how it ends. I hate it that it ends that way, just as a college basketball fan. Like you said, it doesn't really make sense what you can review and what you can't. They'll probably end up changing this one, and I heard Calipari say that last night. They'll probably end up changing this one at one point now, but it's not going to help Kentucky for this game. At the same time, Kentucky had been winning quite a few games in a row here, quite a few close games. They had that close win at Auburn, close win at Mississippi State where they almost blew a lead. Maybe this is good for them. Maybe it's a little bit of a wake-up call. We're going to find out what they're made of this coming weekend against Tennessee. Tennessee's been playing very well. on LSU's side, can LSU keep that kind of momentum and keep playing with that same fire that they had last night? I mean, they needed overtime to beat Missouri at Missouri just a few games ago. They've had 3 overtime wins here in the last, 10, 12 games. LSU has been winning a lot of close games here. You could say that, they're due for some regression, or you could say that they're good at pulling out the close wins, but LSU plays Tennessee at home also next Saturday. So they've got some interesting games coming up as well. They still have to play Florida twice. Florida's definitely not what they should be, but interesting games there. I want to see if LSU can continue that kind of basketball that they played last night, because LSU is certainly a very talented team, and they're kind of putting it together better than what I thought they would this season.
Well, and that was going to be my 3-part question here was that just a quintessential look-ahead spot for Kentucky? Are there flaws about Kentucky, or is LSU just a pretty good team?
Well, I think LSU is a pretty good team. I think Kentucky still has some question marks on offense, though. I mean, if you watch Kentucky run offense, they can get bogged down sometimes. Really good offensive rebounding team, but if the other team is getting a decent amount of defensive rebounds, they could be in trouble. Last night they got 15 offensive rebounds and still struggled. I mean, they only had 1.09 points per possession, pretty solid. But if you don't get 15 offensive rebounds, it'd be hard to score too much. They only get to 71 as it is. So I think their concern is on the offensive end. I'm not concerned about Kentucky on defense. Very solid defense, quite a few shot blockers down there. This Kentucky team just needs to be better at running the half-court offense, and we'll see if they can do that. And I think this weekend is going to be a great test for that.
All right, so we go from a couple of marquee games last night to talking about one of the lowest of the low majors that we can talk about, and these are really the last ones that we haven't gotten to yet. Leagues like the Big South, the MEAC, the SWAC, and the Southland. We'll try to cover those on some of our upcoming segments here. I believe we're doing the Big South on Friday. So you can definitely look forward to that. But these are conferences that, weren't traditionally lined in the regular season up until this year. So we get to conference tournament time, and we'd all sort of be scrambling to figure out what these teams have actually done, what their resumes look like. But this year, the SWAC has been ranked lined on a regular basis, Kyle.
Yeah, those are the extra games now. Those extra games are being lined usually the morning of. I think 5 Dimes put some lines out the night before, but those are always minus 120 juice. I wouldn't suggest taking minus 120 juice on anything. I think that you're laying minus 120, you're hurting your win percentage quite a bit, because obviously then you got to win a lot more than what you do when it's minus 110, and it's hard enough at 110. So I don't suggest taking the minus 120 lines. But this is the SWAC conference. A much different conference than many of the others we've talked about. First of all, it's a weak league, no doubt. There's 72 and 98 ATS in the last 170 non-conference games. So these were usually, SWAC teams were getting lined only in the games against marquee opponents. Now we have lines in the games against each other. I don't have data to go back and say, SWAC teams, how they've done underdogs and favorites, because there haven't been lines on it. But I think it's important to point out how much difference there is in this conference compared to some of the others, where we've talked about the Big Sky, the Summit League, things like that. They're well known for offensive efficiency. The SWAC is full of inefficient offenses. These offenses can really, really struggle. These teams play hard on both ends, but they have a lot of turnovers, very poor shooting percentages. A couple examples here. Only 2 teams in the SWAC have a turnover percentage lower than 20%. And only 2 teams in the league shoot better than 33.9% from three-point range. For comparison's sake here, in the Big Sky that we talked about recently, only 1 team turns it over at more than 20% on offense. So the SWAC, almost everybody does. The Big Sky, only 1 team. Then you look at the Summit League, where well known for good shooting, poor defense. No team in the Summit League shoots worse than 36% from three-point range. And like I said, only 2 teams in the SWAC shoot better than 33.9% from three-point range. So it's something to keep in mind when you're handicapping SWAC games here going forward, that, if you're trying to use any kind of numbers to come up with a total, be really careful about blindly putting on 1 point per possession or 1.05 points per possession. I certainly think it's a good idea usually to use that with efficiency numbers as far as figuring out pace, efficiency, like I said, when you get to a total. Just know that when you're doing that in the SWAC that 0.95, 0.96 are going to be a lot more common than 1.10 like they would in other conferences. So that's the biggest thing about the SWAC.
Well, and a big thing to keep in mind here about the SWAC is that, there are some significant strength of schedule discrepancies here. Somebody like Texas Southern plays a ridiculously hard schedule year in and year out. That's something that they're accustomed to doing. They'll play a lot of road games in a row early on in the year. Then they come into conference play, generally wind up looking pretty good. But as you look at this conference here, the top SWAC team, according to Bart Torvik, in terms of national rank, 241st. That's Prairie View A&M. Top SWAC team for KenPom, Texas Southern, 204th. A lot of that having to do with their non-conference strength of schedule and just how good that was. But we really are talking about one of the lowest of the low majors here. So how do you sort of rank these teams in your power ratings?
Yeah, I've got Texas Southern first, and this was a hard one, honestly. When you talk about Texas Southern versus Prairie View A&M, I think you could make a good case for either one of them being the top team in the league. Prairie View is 9-1 in the league, Texas Southern 7-3 in the league. So just in league play, Prairie View has been better. Texas Southern's really good wins so far this year meant quite a bit to me, though. Winning at Baylor, winning at Oregon, also winning at Texas A&M. Not that Texas A&M is very good, but that's 3 really good wins for a SWAC team. So, that has to factor into the equation. I will say Texas Southern, if you look at their numbers on the year, they've gotten pretty fortunate on free throw defense, which obviously, is a sign of possible regression at only 65.1% that their opponents are shooting. Texas Southern did just beat Prairie View in the last game here, 95-90 this past weekend. They lost on the road 79-73 to Prairie View. That game was really close the entire way. Prairie View outscored them by 5 points in the last 10 minutes and then won by 6. And then in this game here the other night, Prairie View had a lead, a big lead, 71-50 in the second half. Texas Southern comes back and wins 95-90. So these two teams are very evenly matched. The thing that stands out to me about both of these teams is they're both really experienced teams. Texas Southern, the 5th most experienced team in the country. Prairie View A&M, the 10th most experienced team in the country. So, experience matters here. Both of those teams have it. And then I think that Grambling, I would put 3rd, the best defense in the league. There's always room for a team with really good defense to, have a chance. I think this Grambling team is certainly one that could make noise in the conference tournament. They're only giving up 0.877 points per possession in the conference. In the nation overall, they're 13th in effective field goal percentage defense. So Dante Jackson's team plays some really good defense. I have to say, I think it's a really big drop-off after those 3 teams. So I would be surprised if anyone other than those 3 teams wins the SWAC tournament. Big drop-off down to Alabama State. I put them 4th. They have the number 1 non-conference schedule in the country, and that means quite a bit to me. Number 5, Jackson State. Jackson State is a team that I've had some success playing unders with because they play at so much slower tempo than everybody else in this conference. Really try to slow the game down. As long as they're not losing by a good amount, they're going to use up more than 20 seconds of the shot clock almost every possession. Arkansas Pine Bluff, 6th. They have a really good player in McKnight. He can really carry them, but doesn't have that much help around him. I have 7th Southern, 8th Alabama A&M, 9th Alcorn State, 10th Mississippi Valley State. And I will say Mississippi Valley State is one of those examples of an experienced team, but they've been bad every year. So is experience always a good thing? We've talked about this in college football. People say returning starters is so important. I mean, well, if they're good, it's important. But if they've been bad every year, it doesn't help you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some angles that we can look at here come conference tournament time. Prairie View A&M, the top team in conference in both turnover percentage offensively and defensively. Alabama State third in both categories. So maybe those are a couple of teams that we can look at during conference tournaments outside of Texas Southern, who will be the favorite and will likely be the most popular bet on the board here for the SWAC. But hey, you know what? We always like to give the low majors a little bit of love here on the show. And like I said, we'll do that with the Big South here coming up on Friday. Let's get to a positive regression team, and as fate would have it, we're going to another small conference here with the Atlantic Sun.
Yeah, another Atlantic Sun team. North Florida, their offense, they've faced the 57th toughest slate of defenses so far this year. They've faced some really weak defenses down the stretch. I think pushing pace the way that they have been and getting more efficient on offense. Now, they're not good on defense, so I'm primarily saying I think that North Florida's overs have some value going forward because North Florida is not good on defense, pushing the pace consistently, have faced a lot of good defenses. I think they're going to score quite a few points as we go forward here.
The North Florida Ospreys. I remember sweating the A-Sun Conference Tournament a couple of years ago. Maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago now. I had them at like plus 850 or plus 900, something like that, to win the conference tournament. And I was so enamored with this team watching, some of the streams that were out there online with them that I just never bothered hedging it. And of course they wound up losing in the championship game. But hey, it was a fun ride nonetheless.
I think I remember that year. Yeah. North Florida, a team that is similar to what they've been here in the last few years. I mean, they're not very good defensively. They're better offensively than it looks like, though, I think. So let's see if they have some higher scoring games going forward. The negative side when it comes to regression, Ohio State's offense. Look, everybody knows I'm an Ohio State fan, but calling it like I see it, I think Ohio State's offense is really not that good. They face only the 36th toughest slate of defenses, which is really not very good for a Big Ten team. The Big Ten, very good this year, very deep. I think Holtman's a really good coach, and this team has a lot of potential in the future, but I think they're a little bit overvalued right now. As I watch Ohio State, I'm certainly concerned with their turnovers. I'm surprised more teams don't press them. It looks like a winning strategy to me. Their guard play, their guards can shoot it, but their guards haven't been very good at handling the ball. And I think Ohio State's offense is a little bit overvalued at this point. I would look to either go against Ohio State or play some unders with Ohio State going forward.
What was up with Ohio State last Sunday playing Indiana to 59 possessions?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State seems to be trying to slow the game down, but when they play against a team that plays fast, they sometimes play to the other team's tempo. So, that was certainly surprising to me that it would be that slow. Ohio State, if you look at them throughout the conference, they'd had a lot of games that were in the mid-60s as far as tempo. Then they have a 60 against Rutgers at home, then 71 against Penn State at home, and then 59. So they're certainly not consistent. But like I said, I do think that their offense is a little bit overvalued. Anytime you're turning the ball over as much as they are, they're turning it over 21.2% of the time in conference play. If you're not hitting your shots, you're going to have a pretty low total. So I think that you could find some values here with Ohio State unders in the future.
All right, so let's look at some games here. And, as Kyle said, he's coming back on the show on Friday, so we'll be able to talk some more about some of the weekend matchups here on that Friday segment. But we start with a real good one here in the Ohio Valley Conference between Murray State and Austin Peay.
Yeah, I love it when we get to talk about the OVC. It's a good under-the-radar conference, one that I've had some success in the past. Look, everybody knows about Morant from Murray State at this point. Some of his dunks are ridiculous, and just him as a player in general, he's a tremendous player. His assist rate's first in the country. Nobody's doing it better than him, first in the country, according to KenPom. So Murray State is a team that's been really, really efficient on offense in this league, 1.17 points per possession. Defensively, they're second in the league. You look at Austin Peay, they weren't really supposed to be this good. They've been really well coached by Figure. This is a guy that I believe he's just in his second year here. Yeah, he was just in his second year here. Did a solid job getting them to 19-15 last year after they were 11-19 before he took over, and now a big jump to 18-7. A pretty experienced team, pretty deep team, and Austin Peay. I've been surprised how efficient they've been on offense this year. I figured they'd be decent on defense. They force a lot of turnovers, but they're 1.142 points per possession, so not really that far behind Murray State. This is a really interesting game. Austin Peay got beaten up by them badly twice last year. One of the games was particularly ugly. Does that mean they don't match up well with Murray State? Does that mean that this Austin Peay team is just quite a bit better and they'll have a solid chance here? I think Austin Peay is definitely better than they were last year. Murray State, like I said, Morant is tremendous. The rest of their team is solid as well. Murray State has 2 losses in the league. One was at home against Belmont. Morant got hurt at the beginning of that game and played through an injury the rest of the way. Then they lost by 20 at Jacksonville State. They've been a little bit shaky in some of these road games, though. They only won by 10 against SIU Edwardsville, not a very good team on the road. Only won by 4 against Tennessee Tech on the road. I think I like Austin Peay a little bit in this one. I think I might like the over as well. I think both teams will play pretty quickly, both teams efficient on offense. I think we'll get some open shots here. If you get a low 150s total, I think I like the over.
Matt Figger, as you mentioned, it is his second year. One of the branches of the Frank Martin coaching tree there, Kansas State and South Carolina. So a guy that, was the recruiting director there. And this is always an important thing to consider, too, is looking at the teams that make a big stride from year 1 to year 2 with a new head coach. You definitely want to file those away in the back of your minds because you would certainly think, as long as there's not significant roster turnover here, and it does look like there are quite a few seniors on this Austin Peay roster, that, maybe in year 3, this is a team that really, really takes that next step forward. But, yeah, I like this game. I like this conference, actually. I think the OVC is a really interesting conference for a variety of different reasons, because you get these matchups when, Belmont's playing Murray State or, Austin Peay's in there. Jacksonville State's had some good years as well. But these are really high-quality, very competitive college basketball games, and this is a low major I don't think gets enough love.
Yeah, I agree. I've always enjoyed talking about it when we get to conference tournament time. I think this is an interesting conference, too, because you got 3 teams tied at 10-2. Everybody figured Murray State and Belmont would be there. Like I said, Jacksonville State would have been the other favorite in this league. Austin Peay is up there at 10-2. And then you have the 5th-place team is Eastern Illinois at 6-6. So you've got a bunch of teams down there at 3-9 and 4-8. And then you've got these top teams. Certainly a fairly top-heavy league with, 4 teams that probably legitimately have a chance at winning it in the conference tournament. But, conference tournaments can have some strange results, and that's why they're so fun to talk about also.
All right, so we move to the Colonial Athletic Association here. Hofstra is a team that we've talked about a little bit on the show here lately. Got a pretty big one tomorrow night against College of Charleston.
Yeah, I like this game quite a bit. Hofstra has been very good this season. If you look at who the preseason favorites were in this league, it was Northeastern and College of Charleston here. I think that this is a pretty good spot for Charleston. Hofstra has been playing almost exclusively zone. They've switched over to that this year. It's worked out for them. This Charleston offense, though, has been really good against zone so far this year. I looked at splits last night. 49.8% field goal percentage from the floor against a zone defense. So Charleston has done very well against zone defenses. You could argue that maybe this is a better zone defense than what they've played in some of those other games, but I think that Charleston is a better team than they've shown through a lot of this season. They've also played quite a bit tougher schedule than Hofstra has. Hofstra's only played the 326th toughest as far as strength of schedule, according to Ken Palm, so far this year. Like I said, I think this might be a kind of a buy low spot for College of Charleston because you have a team here that I think is better than what they've played. They've underachieved a little bit this year. They have some really good veteran players. Hofstra's played really well. There's no way Charleston's going to overlook this game. So I think you get a really strong effort from them here. And, I mean, what are they going to be? Maybe favored by a point or so? That's what it looks like most people are projecting here. if Charleston's favored by a point, I like Charleston in this game. I think that, if you're getting a really small number like that, I like their chances of winning a game like this. Hofstra rolling along in the league with only one loss. Charleston, a bit of a chip on their shoulder for the fact that they really haven't been good enough compared to what they should have been in the league this year. I think this is a good spot for Charleston.
All right, we stay with the low major theme here, and let's go out to the WAC. We talked about the WAC a little bit on last week's shows. I had UT Rio Grande Valley as one of my favorite plays in my Thursday 3-pack video on YouTube last week. Not only did they cover the 11, they won the game outright. So we go back to the WAC here again, but this time to talk about Utah Valley and New Mexico State.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting spot here because you got New Mexico State off 2 really hard-fought wins in a row on the road, Bakersfield and Grand Canyon. That Grand Canyon game was really impressive. Grand Canyon, a tremendous home court advantage. So those fans get really fired up for those games down there. It's fun to watch some of the Grand Canyon games. I think this is a letdown spot for New Mexico State. Utah Valley's a solid team, certainly not as good as New Mexico State. The question is, how many points are we going to be getting here? Can we get maybe 9, 10 points? If we can get double digits, I think Utah Valley might be a good look. I think it'll probably be about 9 points in this one. Utah Valley's a solid offense. Pope has been known as a solid offensive coach. If you look at Utah Valley, in transition, they've not been very good at all, but in the half court, they're very efficient, very, very efficient in the half court. New Mexico State's defense been very good all year, but they've been especially good at cutting down teams that are very good in transition, according to Synergy. So this is a half-court team in Utah Valley. I think Utah Valley can find ways to score in this game. And if you look at New Mexico State's offense, they're pretty good, but they're not excellent on offense. They're not really a team that, can pull away with great shooting that often. I think, if you just look at the spot, you have to like Utah Valley. And I'll say that Utah Valley hasn't been very good on the road this year, so maybe not, the perfect team to back in this spot, but I think it is a good spot to go against New Mexico State based on their last 2 games.
I like it a lot, and in fact, I recorded a weekend look-ahead video on YouTube here this morning, and I was looking at it. I'll probably be back on the Vaqueros again on Saturday, UT Rio Grande Valley. They play Utah Valley here on Saturday, so a very, very tough, road trip here for Utah Valley, and again, hopefully, my hope would be that, this game plays out the way that you are kind of insinuating here, where Utah Valley keeps this close, hangs around, easily covers the number. Then maybe I look to go against them on Saturday, in something of a letdown spot for them there in that role. So I love talking about games like this and circling spots and, those real low major conferences. It's a lot of fun for me and definitely something I'm very happy that we're able to do on these Handicapping the Hardwood segments. One more game to touch on here, this one in the MAC, so a little bit higher profile, and certainly one of these teams much higher profile. Buffalo battles it out with Toledo this weekend.
Yeah, this is a Friday night game. It's a game where Buffalo absolutely blew out Toledo in the first game. It was 110-80, and actually it was worse than that. They were up 38 points with 4 minutes left. Let off the gas a little bit there. Buffalo made 15 out of 30 threes. Jeremy Harris had 6 threes. Nick Perkins had 4. Toledo decided to run with them in that game, and I think that was a mistake. I want to see if they do that again. That game was played to a pace of 82 possessions. That's exactly what Buffalo wants. Toledo on the year has averaged 67.6 possessions. Toledo at home here, certainly a big revenge spot. You lose 110-80, you're going to remember that. So what's Toledo going to do in this game? They're 20-4. They've had a really solid season. They just won at Bowling Green, their rival. So, sometimes you can think the next game would be a bad spot after beating a rival, but they've got to be up for a game like this. They can't have a letdown against Buffalo, can they? If they get beat here, it's just because they're not as good. The spot favors Toledo. Buffalo just played on Tuesday. Toledo has the week to get ready for this game. I'm real curious to see what this line will be also. I think Buffalo has to be favored on the road here, maybe like 2 or 2.5 points. What can Toledo do in that second game? Toledo's defense has been very good this year compared to past seasons. They're not quite as good on offense, so they've been a good under team this year. I certainly wouldn't want to take the under in this game because they didn't prove that they could slow down Buffalo. I do want to see if they can slow the pace of the game, though. I think that's the key here. Can Toledo get there? Buffalo just going to get running again.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting spot. And also, too, I would probably look to fade Toledo next Tuesday at Eastern Michigan, where they'll be laying a short road number. That looks like a big-time letdown spot after Bowling Green and Buffalo. But, yeah, I'm curious to see how Buffalo fares in this spot, because they didn't really get tested a ton in the MAC last year. This year, they're getting some tests and playing some close games. Want to see what they do here in this one, to be sure. Kyle Hunter, professional handicapper over at HunterSportsPicks.com, also doing the daily piece for us at BangTheBook.com. What's going on over at your website right now, Kyle?
I lowered the prices on the college basketball season pass again. We're getting toward, we're not really that far away from March Madness even. So I think it's 31, 32 days away. So, it's been a really good college basketball season. You can check out all my premium packages over there. 76 and 50 so far this year, so just a touch over 60%. Certainly don't promise to keep hitting that rate. I always try to be totally transparent. There's going to be streaks and slumps, but college basketball is something that I've done very well in the long term. So you can check out all the packages over there at HunterSportsPicks.com. And also, if you haven't already, please sign up for that free picks newsletter over there at HunterSportsPicks.com. And check out the daily articles for Bang the Book. I know there's quite a few people doing that, and certainly appreciate everybody reading that and commenting. It's been a lot of feedback on that, so thanks for checking that out on a daily basis as well.
Well, like I mentioned, Kyle will have a video today for tomorrow's slate of games, and then also on Friday for Saturday's slate of games over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. Kyle Hunter, HunterSportsPicks.com, at Kyle Hunter Picks on Twitter. Always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, brother. I'll talk to you again on Friday.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you then.